Good morning. So I hope like those who are not able to join the offline classes are in attending online. Hello? Hello? No, illa. Hello? Boundaries and frontiers. Okay, boundaries and frontiers. See, you are very much familiar with the term boundaries. You are very familiar with the term boundaries. Now, boundaries are very much essential for the functioning of a modern state. Now, we know that nation states are separated by presence of a line, which we identify as a boundary. Okay, so these boundaries are very much essential for the functioning of a modern state. Now you can see that this is more or less a political or legal term. The idea of boundary is a modern, political, and legal term. In that sense, a boundary accepted by two countries are in fact recognized by the whole world. Okay, a boundary which is the boundary line which is accepted by the two countries, by the associated parties or the associated nation states, will be accepted as a boundary by the whole world. Now, this is very much essential to ensure the functioning of a modern nation state. Now, only when there is a boundary, we can talk about domestic affairs, foreign affairs, etc. Only when there is a boundary, we can impose the laws. Only when there is a boundary, we can protect it with the help of the armed forces. Right. So this is a term which is more or less political in nature, more or less associated with the current functioning of the nation states. Now, in opposition to this, there exists an idea of frontiers. Okay. In opposition to the idea of boundaries, there exists the concept called frontiers. Now, this is more a geographical term, frontiers. Now, what do you mean by frontiers? Now, you can see that this is a geographical term, plus it is also an ancient or medieval term. Now, if you go back in history and look at the existence of large empires or kingdoms, you can see that the idea of boundary is little different from the current concept. Now, there might be two big empires. Okay, there might be two big empires. So this is state A, this is an empire B. Now, in fact, the boundary between these two empires may not be in many cases properly demarcated. Now, there may not be a proper boundary or a line separating the two empires in many cases. Now, this is because the land which is coming in between, is of is an area of some difficulty from geographical perspective. And because of this difficulty, because of this disadvantage, this is an area of very low population. Okay, so this is a geographical area with some difficulty. Okay, so some form of disadvantage. It can be presence of a mountain. Okay, like the case of India and China. It can be a presence of a forest land or a marshland, right? It can be presence of a dry area. Now, these geographical factors actually makes this area an area of marginal utility or low utility. Okay, so the utility of this area is marginal. Okay. Now, it is because this has got some geographical disadvantage. Because of that, there is low population. Now, when an area is having low population, the empires or the kingdoms may not be that much interested to control that area, because controlling that area might be more expensive than the taxes or whatever gain you are going to get. Right? There is very few population, huge area. So when you want to control it, you have to place officials, you have to place soldiers, you have to feed them, give them salary. But the population here is very low. The resources here is very low. So whatever you are going to take back is going to be less than what you're going to pay to control that area. So that such areas are called frontiers. Now, in historical sense, those areas where there is proper population and there is proper development of political, cultural, or economic aspect of the human society, we can call it as ecumen. Ecumen. Now, in population geography, we studied about this concept called ecumen and non-ecumen. There we understood ecumen as an area having high population density, non-ecumen as a sparsely populated area. Okay, almost same principle. Almost same principle, but the difference is here we are talking about ecumen as an area, not from the population perspective, from the perspective that it is a developed area. Okay, it is an area which is having, population is also implicit, but explicitly we are talking about the fact that this is a politically, economically developed area, evolved area. Okay, an area of civilization. So that means in the ancient times, there will be empires or kingdoms, which will be an area associated with some advantages, geographical advantages, fertile soil, presence of rivers, presence of ports, which make it an area of high population density. Slowly, this population will develop an economic system, legal system, converting this area into an ecumen. Now, in between such ecumens, there exist areas of less utility because of the geographical disadvantage. It might be presence of a big mountain. It might be a very thick forest. It could be a marshland. Now, such areas are not that much conducive for human habitation. They cannot support huge population. So thereby, these areas are left aside by the big empires. Okay. Thereby, these areas are left aside by the big empires. Such areas are called the frontiers. Now, a classic example you can think about is, you might have watched many like cowboy movies, right? So all these cowboy movies are actually located in the American West. Okay, the American, the western part of USA. Now, the western part of USA in 18th and 19th century was a frontier. It was not directly coming under the rule of the United States of America. These areas were in general outside the larger scope of say these areas were outside the larger scope of direct control by the by a country. So there might sometimes be a country claiming it, adding it in the map, but on ground there may not be any say police station or any officials who are actually taking care of the issues there. So this is actually a wild area. That's the reason why we call it as Wild West. Okay, so that's the concept of frontier. Now you can see that frontiers have two dimensions. On one hand, you can see that frontiers are an area of danger, because it's so vast, less population. There is nobody to enforce laws, so you can get attacked. So if you go there, you may get attacked by some miscreants. So there might be robbers, or there might be murderers who are actually taking refuge in such areas, away from the legal system, right? So one hand, you can see that it's an area of danger. On the other hand, you can see that it is also an area of opportunity, because this is less explored. There is a chance for unexplored mineral resources. There is a chance for presence of gold. There is a chance for presence of other minerals. There is a chance for you finding a fertile valley. So you can see that on one hand, this is an area of danger. At the same time, if you are, say, adventurous enough to go and explore such an area, to face the danger, you may sometimes encounter an opportunity. You can become rich and powerful in that sense. So one side it is an area of danger, other side it is an area of opportunity. You might have heard about the gold rush, in US. So there was this say discovery of gold in western part of the US. Suddenly people from the eastern developed area started moving towards the west. Now it is a dangerous journey, because there is a possibility for you getting injured or killed in the process, because there is nobody to enforce the laws. So this is the idea of frontiers and borders. Frontiers and boundaries. Now I will we have to, this is very important topic. So recently, almost every year UPSC is asking questions from this area. So earlier it was rimland, heartland. Now the focus has slightly moved towards the frontiers and boundaries. Now we'll do one thing. We'll take this introductory dictation, take down the introductory dictation. Then we need to go into differences between boundaries and frontiers. So there, I think you can directly take down from the you can directly take down lecture notes. Take down frontiers and boundaries. എങ്ങനെ വന്നു? ഏതുവഴി വിട്ടോ? അതുവഴി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ so online students, nothing. There is a say what do you call blockade all around the institute. So we are finding it little difficult to reach here. So write down frontiers. They are zones of varying width. They are zones of varying width, separating the fully developed.
They are zones. What, sir? Actually?
Zones.
Oh, zones. Okay.
Zones of varying width, separating the fully developed, politically and economically integrated, separating the fully developed, politically and economically integrated parts of a given pair of states. Politically and politically and economically integrated parts of a given pair of states. These may consist of uninhabited or sparsely populated areas, uninhabited or sparsely populated areas of marginal utility, Next paragraph, you write. Okay, so you continue that. Marginal utility at the current level of technology. At the current level of technology, comma, at the current level of technology, comma, so that the states on either side, states on either side of the frontier, may not feel the need to define the precise real limit of their political jurisdiction. Okay, next paragraph, right? It is a geographical area. It is a geographical area beyond a political unit, into which expansion can take place. Next paragraph, you write. It can be described and explained. With respect to ecumen. Ecumen. With respect to ecumen. Put a hyphen and write. A zone of civilization. Which is socially, culturally, economically and politically organized. And is a zone of good geographic conditions. Like fertile soil, water, moderate climate, etc. Like fertile soil, water, moderate climate, etc. Frontiers are located outside of a given ecumen, and suffers from geographical and environmental constraints. Okay, so that's about boundaries, frontiers. Next you write boundaries. Okay, I hope you got the idea. Okay, so frontiers. Say, for example, in old times, you can consider Himalayas as a frontier because it's so tough. It may not be an area ruled by major empires. Okay, it was not part of Mughal Empire. It was not part of Mauryan. It was not sometimes even part of British. Okay, so these are areas which were added towards the end. Okay, that means these are areas of a lot of difficulty that probably all the major rulers or the major empires will find it find having less utility. Okay, less advantage of profit in controlling such areas. Okay, so such areas are called frontiers. Okay, even today it has got a frontier character. Even today, large part of the Himalayas are unexplored. Huge portion is having huge areas are forested, very sparsely populated, likewise. So all the mountainous regions are in that sense a frontier. Okay, Andes is a frontier. A large part of Andes is unexplored, sparsely populated, etc. Okay, so that's the idea of frontiers. It can be dry areas, it can be marsh areas, it can be something like Himalayas. Now you will get a better understanding while we look into the differences. Next is boundaries. Write down. It is a political legal concept. It is a political legal concept. They are lines demarcating. They are lines demarcating outer limits of a territory. Under sovereign jurisdiction of a nation state. Under sovereign jurisdiction of a nation state. Write down. Existence of boundaries show that political community has reached a relative degree of maturity, orderliness, and law-abiding character. Yes. Existence of boundaries show that political community has reached a relative degree of maturity, orderliness, and law-abiding character. To have a stable internal political structure. Distinction is required between To have a stable political structure, distinction is required between domestic and foreign affairs. Domestic and foreign affairs. Boundaries facilitate this distinction. Boundaries facilitate this distinction.
Sir, repeat.
Okay. To have stable internal political structure, distinction is required between domestic and foreign affairs. Full stop. Next sentence. Boundaries facilitate this distinction. Boundaries facilitate this distinction. Last sentence. Supranational, national, comma, non-national factors undermine supranational and non-national factors undermine the significance of boundary to some extent. Undermine the significance of boundaries to some extent. Now, what are we talking about? Supranational ideas or organizations like European Union. European Union undermine the idea of nation state among its members. Okay. Or they will undermine the existence of boundaries. This is the reason why there is what do you call it? Which visa? Not gold. Schengen visa. So Schengen visa, actually, with that, you can actually travel across the boundaries. That means you are undermining the boundary. You can actually get into a train from Paris and you can travel to maybe Warsaw. Anybody from Europe? Okay, the idea is you don't actually have to respect boundaries in such organization. Similarly, United Nations, okay, not to the level of European Union, but United Nations also sometimes undermine the power of boundaries. Okay, the significance of boundaries. At the same time, we can also see that there are other things like climate change. Okay, so climate change, natural disasters, they don't have to respect boundaries. Okay, so you can see there are certain things which undermine the significance of boundaries. You have to work together. Okay, to control climate change, to address natural disasters like cyclone or tsunami or flood, etc. You can see that there is a need for cooperation among the nations. Okay, so that these things actually undermine the significance or existence of boundaries. Okay. Now we need to see the difference between frontiers and boundaries. Frontiers and boundaries. Now, you can see that frontiers are aerial in character. Okay, it's an area, it's a zone. Boundaries are linear in character. They are it form a it's a line. Okay. So boundaries are just a line, but frontiers actually form a zone. Okay, an area. Now you can see that Frontiers are transitional zones of geographical or geographical nature. Okay, it's a transition zone of geographical nature because it is usually a geographical feature which creates or which act as a frontier, a mountain, a marshland, say a dry region, a desert. Now, on the other hand, you can see that this is purely political in origin and function. Purely political in origin and function. Okay, so this portion, there will not be any dictation. So online students, please take down, okay, as we discuss the points. Okay, so most of them are self-explanatory. Next, you can see that next is frontiers are outer oriented.
Sir, മറ്റേതൊന്ന് കാണിക്കാവുന്ന ഇവിടെ.
Okay,
Just
okay.
ഒരു 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, no? Okay. കഴിഞ്ഞോ?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next is frontiers are outer oriented. Now, what do you mean by frontiers are outer oriented? That means it is an area into which expansion can happen. You actually look forward or look into the frontier, you will see for opportunity. You will have this like idea to move into that area. So in that sense, frontiers are outer oriented, or you can say that they are manifestations of centrifugal forces, the forces which are trying to move out from the core part of a country towards the outer areas. Okay, so in that sense, you can see they are areas which are outer oriented because they are areas which provide they have the potential to provide an opportunity or a fortune. Okay, in that sense, people might try to explore that area. Okay, the population might be slowly increasing, new resources might be slowly getting explored. In that sense, you can see that this is something which is changing. Okay, so which is constantly changing. It can slowly transform itself into a more developed region. Okay, so in that sense, it's an area which actually expands your thought. Okay, so you will try for opportunity, you will try for some say new developments, etc. So here you can see that in that sense, you can also see that this is an this shows or they are manifestations of the centrifugal forces. Okay, that is, we are trying to expand outside from the center part. Okay, towards the outside from the center part. On the other hand, you can see that these are inner oriented. Boundaries are inner oriented. In that sense, say for example, consider the India-Pakistan boundary. Okay, so there are two villages which are just 1 kilometer away, or say 1 kilometer is too close. Okay, so we'll take 5 kilometers away. Okay, one is in Pakistan, one is in India. Now, though they are very closely located to each other, they will be this village will be looking towards Islamabad, and this village will be looking towards Delhi. Okay. So in that sense, they are looking, they are actually focused towards the inside rather than towards the outside. Okay. So their whole energy is towards the inside. So on the other hand, here you can see if there is a state here, there is a frontier here. Those people who are living here will be always having that thought in the mind that I should go to this area and explore, and maybe I will become rich or something like that. Okay, so that's the reason why we call it as outer oriented. This is inner oriented. Now here, they will not be having this idea to move into the other country or something. Okay. Now this is manifestation of centripetal forces. Okay. Centripetal forces. Okay, sorry. Online students, please quickly take down. Okay. Done? Online? Shall we
Yes,
move to the next point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Okay. So next point. So this is important. This is a reflection of the third point. Now here you can see that frontiers act as an integrating factor. Okay, so frontiers act as an integrating factor between the states on either side. So that means people from, so there is a state A, state B. There is a frontier. Now people from both these sides will be coming to this area. There will be intermixing. Okay, slowly this will act as an area which help each country to understand each other. Okay, it acts as an integrating factor. There will be mix of cultures here. Okay, there is a possibility of more languages, mix of languages. So take the case of Himalayas. You can find most of the major religions of the region in the Himalayas. Okay, so because from every side people are coming, people are trying to explore. You can find different cultures. So when you talk about Himalayas, Himalayas is Indian, Himalaya is Nepali, Himalaya is Bhutani, Himalaya is Chinese, Himalaya is Pakistani. Okay, so Himalaya is not just one country because it was a frontier. People from multiple areas try to explore this area. So it has got multiple character. It has an integrating character. Okay, so though they have differences with respect to language or religion, because of the fact that they are located along a single frontier, probably people can integrate with each other in a slightly easier manner. Okay, so Himalaya unite them, or Himalaya act as an integrating factor, which help them to mix with each other. Okay. Okay, so on the other hand, you can see that frontiers are acting as a separating factor. Sorry, boundaries act as separating factor. Okay. So when there is a boundary, people will not try for integration. Okay. So for example, the boundaries which you can find in the plains, okay, in the river plains. Say for example, the boundary in Punjab, boundary in Bengal. Okay, though there is same language, same culture, same history, the boundary is acting as a separating factor. Okay, so this boundary has divided the minds and the led to the creation of two different nations which look in very different directions. Okay, so this act as a separating factor. Online, shall we move to next point?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, I hope you have taken down.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next point. So this is fifth point. You can see that frontiers are in general physical in nature. And because of this physical nature, there will be linguistic ethnic character as well, right? So because population will come and it will bring in some ethnic or linguistic or religious differences. Whatever, the idea is frontiers, whether physical, linguistic, or ethnic, cannot be moved. Okay, so they are immovable. Okay, you cannot change, you cannot actually move a frontier. You cannot move Himalayas. Himalayas are a frontier. It will be there. Okay. Right? But you can change the boundaries in the Himalayas. Okay. Maybe because of the boundary disputes. Okay. Maybe there is a possibility for change in the boundary between Nepal and China. The boundaries can change, but frontier as Himalaya will stay there. Now, you can see that on the other hand, the character of the frontier can change. If you go back 1,000 years, the character of Himalaya is not like this. Himalaya was less explored. Himalaya is having less kingdoms or history. But in the last 1,000 years, there was more exploration. Its character has changed. Okay. So you can see that a frontier may change. Okay. May change its character. Or sometime it may stop being a or lose much of its frontier function. Okay. Say, for example, American Wild West. It has lost its frontier function. Right. It has become a single country. Whatever like minerals can be explored or identified, which has been already identified, it has lost the frontier character. Now nobody is going there. Okay. Now we don't see it as a frontier. It was a frontier in the past. 100 years back, 200 years back, the American Wild West was a frontier. Now it is not a frontier. Okay, so you can see that a frontier cannot be moved, but it can actually disappear or it can lose its function. Okay, you cannot change the American Wild West. You cannot change that area or you cannot move that area. That area is there, but that area may stop functioning as a frontier. Okay, that's the idea of idea that the frontier cannot be moved. On the other hand, you can see that boundaries are by no means immovable. Okay. Every shift in power balance may lead to shift in boundary line. Okay, so look at the boundary lines in Europe in the last 100 years. It has been changing. Okay, the boundaries in Europe has been changing. After every world war, it will change. Okay, even after World War, it can change. Here, yes, you can talk about ethnic cleansing. Okay, so it can also lead to that losing of the frontier character. Okay. So here you can see that boundaries can be moved. On the other hand, frontiers cannot be moved. Now, lastly, we can summarize by telling that frontiers. Okay, online students, I hope you have taken down online.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so last we can see that frontiers are phenomenons of the past. Okay, so frontiers are something which can be more relevant in the ancient times or medieval times or at the early modern times. Okay, so in 21st century, this has almost become not that very much relevant. Okay, so there is no more real frontiers left in the world, or maybe the frontiers, we need to redefine frontiers. Okay, so for example, Antarctica. Maybe you can see Antarctica as a frontier. Currently, nobody is controlling it. It is an unexplored area, low population, harsh climate. People are interested. Okay, every country is setting up research station. Maybe tomorrow, maybe because of the climate change, if the temperature increases at a very say huge degree point in the tropical areas, maybe humans will be forced to move into Antarctica. It will become a frontier. We will start exploring it. Okay, so the frontiers in the old frontiers have almost lost its significance, but maybe new areas might get developed as a new frontier. Okay, so like Antarctica, it's a possibility of developing into a frontier. Like Arctic. Okay, Arctic can also develop into as a frontier. Though it's an ocean, it can also develop into a frontier because of the unexplored nature of the Arctic. Okay, so this is the concept of frontiers and boundaries. I can see that these are very much modern idea, very much essential for the functioning of modern nation states. Okay, modern concept, essential for functioning of more nation states. Okay, so you should understand with clarity the concept of frontiers. Okay. Boundary is simple. You know what is boundary. Then only you can apply it. You can develop beyond what you have just learned to apply it in the current context. Okay. Say for example, as I mentioned, Antarctica can be understood as a frontier. Oceans can be understood as a frontier, because earlier humans were not that much interested in the oceans, or we were not having technology. Now we are actually exploring even what is there in the ocean floors, or even what is deep below the ocean floors. Okay, we are digging the ocean floors to find the resources. That means these are all unexplored areas. Okay, in that sense, you can see that oceans are a new frontier. Okay, so we are trying to explore it. So such application type questions you can expect from this concept of frontiers and boundaries. Okay, so next is certain classifications of boundaries. Next is classification of boundaries. So this portion I will be dictating notes. Classification of boundaries. Okay, so classification of boundaries. So there are two ways in which you can classify. One is called genetic classification. Another is morphological classification. Genetic classification and morphological classification. Okay, so genetic means here we are trying to see the evolution of the boundaries. We are trying to connect the boundary with its relation to the cultural landscape. That is a population. Okay. So what is the relation of the boundary to the population living there? So here the relation is between boundary and cultural landscape. Okay. Now, on the other hand, you can see that when you look at morphological boundaries, or morphological classification. Morphological classification is about the form in which a boundary exists on ground. That means whether this boundary is existing as a physical boundary, like a mountain, or whether this boundary is existing as a cultural boundary, like two linguistic group. Okay, in what form it is existing on ground? It can exist on ground as a physical boundary. A mountain or a river can act as a boundary. So that means it is existing as a physical boundary. Now, on the other hand, sometimes this boundary might be due to cultural differences. Okay, one language, another language, two countries, one religion, another religion, two countries. So that means it's a culture that is dividing the or acting as the boundary. Okay, so in which form it exists? We'll study both of them. There are 4 different types under both these classification. We'll see. We'll start with the genetic classification. We'll start with the genetic classification. Okay. Genetic classification. So in case of genetic classification, we are trying to find a relation between boundary and the boundary and the cultural landscape. Okay. Okay. So here, first one is called antecedent boundaries. Now, antecedent boundaries are boundaries which are drawn before the evolution of the cultural landscape. Okay, so they are drawn before the evolution of cultural landscape. Okay, so that means, say for example, the 49th parallel act as the boundary between US and Canada. Okay, so the 49th parallel act as the 49th parallel means that is a latitude. Okay, so that latitude, you can see that for large part of the boundary between US and Canada, it's a line. Okay, so this line is actually created by the 49-degree north latitude. Okay, it's called 49th parallel. Now, even before people started living in this area, even before both Canada and US has explored its western portion, they came to an agreement to identify this as their boundary. Okay, that means even before exploration, even before complete exploration, even before complete evolution of the cultural landscape, they have actually identified a boundary. Okay, such case is called the antecedent boundary. Okay, so here you can see boundaries are established even before population come and live there. Okay, one way. Now, in some books, even the boundaries created by the Europeans in Africa by the Berlin Conference is also considered as antecedent boundary. Okay, so here the Europeans sit together in a room and actually they draw lines in the African map and divided this area among themselves even before going there or exploring it. They found it Africa is weak. They can obviously control Africa. So even before going into war and actually exploring and creating a colonial establishment, even before that, they sit together in a room. They took the map of Africa and they started dividing Africa among themselves. Okay, so this also can be considered as an example of antecedent. This also can be considered as an example of antecedent boundaries. Okay, so that means we are drawing boundary even before exploration, even before the total full development of the cultural landscape. Okay. I think for conceptual clarity, you better avoid using this as an example for antecedent boundary. I will tell you the reason. Okay. For your purpose, for better clarity regarding the idea of antecedent or idea of genetic classification, you stick with 49th parallel. Okay, don't use this one. It's given in the Majid Hussain, but I think we'll give a better explanation. Okay, why it should not be included here. Now, second type is called the subsequent boundaries. Okay, so these boundaries are developed subsequent to the development of cultural landscape. Okay, that means they form after the development of the cultural landscape or along with the development of the cultural landscape. That means when two languages are formed, they develop a boundary. So most of the boundaries in Europe, you can see, is in the lines of language. Okay, French speaking area is France, German speaking area is Germany. Okay, Spanish speaking area is Spain. Because that means the cultural landscape, the population and its character. Language is a very important character, cultural character of a population, because language unites people. Okay, language makes the communication possible. You cannot communicate with people speaking in different language, right? So then you cannot connect with them. So you cannot create that unity in normal case with distant languages. Okay, so countries like India are exceptions, but we are talking about in general, language is a very unifying factor. So you can see that subsequent boundaries are developed when boundaries develop after the development of cultural landscape. It can be language, it can be religion, it can be other character like ethnic groups. Okay, say for example, Arabs, Slavs, these are all ethnic groups. Okay, so they may not be they may not be speaking same language. Okay, they may not be falling under same religion, but they have a history which unite them. Okay, so that's called ethnic groups. Ethnic idea of ethnicity is also a cultural idea. It's not similarities in the facial features or bodily features that make you belong to an ethnic group. That is race. Okay, so race is something related to physical characteristics. Ethnicity is something related to your ancestry and history. So usually it will be connected with language. Okay, usually people speaking same language. So for example, Arabs are actually religiously diverse, but linguistically united by Arabic language. Okay, so there can be Arab Muslims, Arab Christians, Arab Jews, Arab Druze. There are smaller languages. Okay, so Arab ethnicity is created by the use of Arabic language. Okay, though it is predominantly Muslim, but there can be Arab Jews, so Arab Christians, Arab Jews, Arab Druze, etc. So there are smaller religions also in Middle East, especially in Iraq, in Syria. You can find very small religions, very ancient religions. Okay, 3,000, 4,000-year-old small religions are there. Okay, so all these people are actually sometimes united by this idea of So they are united by the use of single language. So you can see ethnicity also sometimes can lead to boundaries. Okay, next is superimposed. And the name is, so the term is almost self-explanatory. When somebody imposes a boundary into a region, superimposed. Okay. So most of the boundaries of Africa and Asia are examples of superimposed boundaries. Now, when somebody from outside or a powerful entity in that region can impose a boundary, superimposed boundaries. Okay, so if there is a powerful country in a region, that they can actually impose a boundary, that's also a superimposed boundary. Or somebody coming from outside and imposing a boundary, that's also superimposed boundaries. Now, in case of superimposed boundary, you can see that it is not in tune with the cultural landscape. Now, this is a big issue in most of Africa. Okay, so most of the Africa, you can see that same ethnic group will be divided into multiple countries. Okay, divided among multiple countries. So you can go to West Africa. You can see Nigeria, Togo, Benin. Okay, so these countries you can find same ethnic groups sometimes, and they are actually divided by these subsequent boundaries. Or sorry, superimposed boundaries. Last is relict boundaries. Relict boundaries. What are relict boundaries? Literal meaning, they are boundaries of the past. They once existed as a boundary. Now they are not boundaries. Okay, these boundaries has been become dysfunctional, or they have actually been removed. And the best example is the case of West and East Germany. Okay, there existed a boundary between West and East Germany, but with the unification of the Germany, you can see that this boundary has become a relic boundary. But many times, even in relic boundary, you can see a difference. Okay, many times you can see a difference between the two regions. Even today, there is a difference between West Germany and East Germany. Even today, West Germany is more developed than East Germany. Okay, though this boundary is no more existing, still you can find differences created by the boundary, which is still existing on ground. Even you can see the physical boundary. Okay, you go there, you can physically see a boundary running along this line. Okay, which one? Indian Pakistan relic boundary. Indian Pakistan ipo boundary undallo. Like this is if only it goes. Okay, now if tomorrow Indian Pakistan get united, probably it will become a relic boundary. Okay, so currently there is a boundary. Okay, in case of Germany, that there was a boundary, but there is no boundary now. Okay, so it is an example of relic boundary and a boundary which existed in the past. Okay, so this is the concept of genetic boundaries. We'll take down notes.
Sir, sir, India state formation occur subsequent boundary alle.
Which formation?
States in India form the subsequent boundary alle.
Are you talking in case of India?
Yes, sir.
In case of India, state formation can be considered as a subsequent boundary, because most of the states are running along linguistic lines. Okay, linguistic lines. So languages act as the boundary. So, but you can see that it's an evolution. Okay, so earlier people speaking same language were not included in a single single state. Okay, say for example, Madras Presidency earlier had Tamil speaking population, Telugu speaking population, Malayalam speaking population, and Kannada speaking populations. Okay, so it is recently that it has become so India Pakistan is a mix actually. it has got subsequent character. It has got superimposed character as well. Okay. So in books, it will be shown in different groups. Okay. So to some extent, okay. So more so in superimposed. So because if there was not say British colonialism, probably this boundary would not have happened. Same. Okay. So thing is like if it is totally, if Indians never wanted, or the early British Indians never wanted to have two countries, and they with force British imposed upon us this division, then it is a best example of superimposed. Now this was the case in Africa, because Africa nobody was talking about any division or separation. Okay, so they actually wanted to have a country among the ethnic lines. Here it's a mix. Okay, so here it is mostly as a result of colonialism, but there was also a political movement for having two countries. Okay, so that makes it little complex. But it's, if you want to quote it as an example, give it as a superimposed, okay, because largely it is a result of colonialism. Anyway, the line was drawn by Britishers. Okay. Interaction illeno. This is actually about the evolution of the boundary or relation between cultural landscape and the boundaries. Okay, so it's all organic, or it's all evolving. Okay, so when you open up boundaries, maybe tomorrow the countries can say slowly develop, or the regions can slowly integrate into a single country, probably in future. We don't know. Okay, so we never existed like this throughout the history. Okay, so we were part of different smaller, bigger empires in the past. Say for example, take the case of Kerala. Okay, so for example, Trivandrum. Okay, Trivandrum being at the extreme end has always been an independent country rather than part of the pan-India empires. But if you go to North Kerala, say for example, extreme and Kasaragod, so you can see that Kasaragod has mainly come under pan-India empires. Okay, so Kerala was largely outside the pan-India empires under say Mauryas, or under Khilji, or under say under the Mughals. Okay, but you can see that many times other parts of South India came under the direct rule of all these pan-India empires, at least for a short time period. But because of the difficulty in managing these faraway areas, slowly it will again become independent. Okay, so it will keep on happening like that. Okay, so the boundaries will keep on changing. Probably in the modern times, it has become more consolidated and more rigid in that sense. Okay, so it will keep changing. Okay, so and probably tomorrow the idea of boundaries become little irrelevant, because we all are watching the same movies, same type of mobile phones. Okay, same dress, almost same dress. All the cultural differences may change. Say for example, so this okay, this is sometimes it's global. Okay, so maybe if the same class was taken by a Nigerian, he will also be dressing almost like this. Okay, but if you go back 100 years, I will not be dressing like this. My Nigerian friend will also be not dressing like this. Okay, we'll be having cultural differences. Okay, but we are slowly becoming almost same. Okay, especially in the urban areas, within our rooms, whether you are sitting and watching Game of Thrones in India or in say Brazil, it's almost the same. Okay, the experience that we have or we are sharing now has become little or very much similar. So this is a big issue for the kids who are born now. Okay, so they are not that much getting exposed to the music or other cultural elements of the region into which they are being born. Okay, so everybody is watching some international YouTube channels. Okay, Okay, so write down genetic classification. Genetic classification. It is based on relation between boundary line. It is based on
Sir,
relation.
ഒന്നുകൂടി ഒന്ന് repeat ചെയ്യാം, sir.
It is based on relation between.
Sir, അത് actually antecedent അല്ലേ?
അല്ല, നമ്മളിപ്പം ഫുള്ള് ഇത് ചെയ്യാണ്. വാട്ട് ടു സേ, നമ്മൾ ഡിക്റ്റേഷൻ ചെയ്യാണ്.
Okay.
Okay, so write down genetic classification. Genetic classification. It is a classification based on. It is a classification based on relation between boundary line. Relation between boundary line and the evolution of cultural landscape. And the evolution of cultural landscape. Okay. Antecedent boundaries. Antecedent boundaries. Boundaries that predated. Boundary that predated the evolution of cultural landscape. The evolution of cultural landscape. Full stop. These are international boundaries. These are international boundaries agreed upon at the conference table. At the conference table, even before the concerned territory. Even before the concerned territory was fully explored and colonized. Was fully explored and colonized. They are mostly straight line or geometric boundaries. They are mostly straight line or geometric boundaries. Okay, as we don't know what is on the ground, you will not have to like spare time to draw a irregular line. You can draw a straight line. Okay. Example, 49th parallel. 49th parallel between US and Canada. Okay, so this is the US-Canada boundary. Okay, so you can see such straight line boundaries in many parts of the world. See. Okay, so we'll see that later in morphological classification again. Next one, subsequent boundaries. Subsequent boundaries. In this case, definition and demarcation. In this case, definition and demarcation has followed the evolution of cultural landscape. In this case, the definition and demarcation has followed the evolution of cultural landscape. Such boundaries often conform to ethnic, cultural divisions of the landscape. Ethnic, cultural divisions of the landscape.
Sir,
Often conform to. Often conform to ethnic, cultural divisions of the landscape, especially the division of language and religion. Especially the division of language and religion. Boundaries of Boundaries of Eastern Europe. Boundaries of Eastern Europe. Actually, whole of Europe is also correct. Or you write boundaries of Europe. Boundaries of Europe. Superimpose boundaries. Superimpose boundaries. It does not conform to the socio-cultural divisions. It does not conform. It does not conform to the socio-cultural divisions on ground. To the socio-cultural divisions on ground. They were imposed on concerned communities. They were imposed on concerned communities, either by outside power or the overbearing unit between the two.
Sir, our sentence on that.
They were imposed on concerned communities. They were imposed on concerned communities either by an outside power, either by an outside power or the overbearing unit between the two, or the overbearing unit between the two. That means the powerful country among two countries. Okay, so if one country is very powerful, the second one is less powerful, maybe the powerful country may impose its boundary on the other country. Okay. Example, boundaries of Africa.
Sir, overbearing overbearing.
Overbearing unit between the two. That means overbearing unit between the two. Colonial boundaries of Africa. Okay, best example is colonial boundaries of Africa. Relict boundaries. Relict boundaries. These boundaries have been eliminated from the ground. Eliminated from the ground and have lost their political function. And have lost their political function. However, socio-economic differences still prevail on the ground. Still prevail on the ground. Example, East and West Germany. Example, East and West Germany. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be looking into morphological classification, then theories on international boundaries, two small areas. Then probably we can complete the geographical basis of Indian federalism. Okay. These areas, the topics which we completed in the last 3 classes, these are very important. Okay, so every year there will be question from this particular portion. Learn to connect with current affairs that you read. Okay, so don't just stick with the bookish information. How the conceptual clarity from the books. Now you can apply these concepts into the events that you see in the international affairs. Okay, thank you. Online students, any doubts? So offline students വിചാരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടാവും ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് എന്താ ഡൗട്ട് ഇല്ലേ? നിങ്ങളോട് ആരും ഡൗട്ട് ചോദിക്കാറില്ലല്ലേ? Okay, so we'll end the session for the day. Thank you.